Okay, sweet. So Emily is co-founder and managing director at Goparity Canada. We're going to get more into Goparity and what you do, that sort of impact finance for everyday life. I love the little background there. Before we do that, we'd just love to learn a little bit more about your background. What was your first exposure to impact investing? Like, why did you decide to enter into this field?
Yeah, it all for me started during my undergrad. I think, broadly every day we're faced with choices about how to use our money, and a lot of these choices have sustainability implications. So knowing that I wanted to make decisions that aligned with my values, I was constantly drawn to this sort of green or ethical purchasing that you can do. But as we're learning more and more, there's of course a lot of greenwashing when it comes to terminology used by brands to make you buy things.
Totally.
So green, free range, ethically sourced don't hold the meanings that most of us would attribute to those terms. You need to do a bit more research to know whether a product is actually doing the good that it says it's doing. So I learned that it's the same with finance, whether it's the capital you're spending, the capital sitting in your savings account, or the capital that you are investing, it is creating an impact. So yeah, my first exposure was during my undergrad. I was in business school learning about traditional finance. Meanwhile, I was understanding more and more about the destructive investments that my university was making, that large banks were making, and even that I was making unknowingly, which were contributing to the climate crisis and things that industries that I was really against. So even with like so-called clean ETFs, after a bit of digging, I found the holdings didn't meet my expectations of what should be in a clean fund. So really just understanding the impact of my finances on people, planet, and profit became important for me. And during that time of learning, I fell in love with impact investing, which as you explained today, it actually shows the environmental and social impact that investment has, which just makes it so straightforward and transparent compared to what I was seeing in a traditional investment fund. And this is a really, really important side of investing. Investors want context, data, information to make a sound investment decision. And that's what I really found in impact investing. But I did come across a problem during my time exploring impact investing, which is that I couldn't actually make an impact investment, which stems from this big flaw in the Canadian impact investing space. And I couldn't make an investment because I wasn't accredited. I didn't have tens of
Let's
thousands.
unpack that. Let's unpack that because a lot of people aren't going to know what that means. So the way it
Totally.
works for impact investing is that, for the longest time, in order to do impact investing, you had to be what's called an accredited investor, which I've looked up the definition. You either have to be like super high income, like I think the threshold is like 300K income for each last 2 or 3 years,
Per
something like
year.
that.
Yeah.
Or you need to be a millionaire, that if you've got like millions of dollars in assets, they're like, congratulations, you can take more risk. So for the longest time, impact investments were really limited to what we would call high net worth investors. And I think that's really what you're talking about here is, and that, similar to me, like my mission is I want this to be accessible to regular everyday people. So is that really the gap that you're trying to fill here?
That's exactly it. That's exactly what it is. It actually, what's crazy is that what non-accredited individuals like myself represent 99% of the Canadian population and about 75% of private wealth in Canada.
Yeah.
So by not including these folks, we're preventing trillions of dollars of investment from entering the Canadian impact investing space. And we're preventing the whole concept of democratization of decision making when it comes to financing initiatives that are working to provide a better future for our planet and our communities.
I love it. So, it makes perfect sense to me. I think your journey is similar to mine in a lot of ways. Started on the traditional finance side, said, wait a minute, WTF, there are a few things wrong with this. Let's be part of the solution. Now, Goparity has its origins in Portugal. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
So how did you learn about this like Portuguese crowd lending platform? Like my understanding is that, lending and these like crowd lending, it's much more common in other countries, right? Private lending is really common there, but that, so you would have seen that in Portugal and then decided to bring it here to Canada. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. So in 2020, I teamed up with some like-minded individuals who were also really interested in this issue of the lack of accessibility and impact investing. And while we were in the research period, COVID happened because it was 2020, and our immediate community was cut off. And at the time, we were based in London, Ontario. So our
My
London,
hometown.
Ontario, yeah, true. Our London, Ontario community was cut off. But that is what forced us to think on a global perspective. And we ended up talking to companies around the world and were very impressed specifically with some of the European impact finance models that were using crowdfunding to increase accessibility in this space. So we assessed the viability of bringing something like this type of model, like the ones we were talking to in Europe, into the Canadian market. And eventually we teamed up with Goparity Europe, which was, it's just an incredible impact investment platform. They're based in Lisbon, Portugal. And immediately we saw a really clear value alignment. And they have this amazing team of diverse experts in areas of risk management, impact assessment, software development, startup strategy, and all of that experience, knowledge that they had is what we knew we needed to also bring this to the Canadian market. And that's what ultimately made us decide to partner.
I love it. And now let's get to the nitty gritty because you have an offering right now. People want to know how to get started. And you've got an offering that I think is going to close like very soon. Like I was on your website and it's in like 2 days or 3 days, two
Yeah.
days. So we're sneaking this webinar in, kind of just under the line here. And if people who are in here want to get involved with this specific one, hopefully there are going to be a lot more in the future. But I do absolutely want to get to this, that you're raising, in the process of raising $100,000 for Barclay Group with the
Mm-hmm.
goal to fuel Indigenous-owned clean energy solutions. Is that right?
Yeah.
So talk to me about Barclay Group. What do they do? What are they going to use this 100K for?
Yeah. It's a great question. We've actually worked with Barclay Project Group in the past, and we're thrilled to be working with them again. I'll start just by providing some context about the organization itself. So Barclay is a renewable energy developer who has been creating clean energy solutions for remote Indigenous communities in Western Canada, and they've been doing this since 2003.
Wow.
So it's been around for a while now. Their clients are actually exclusively Indigenous communities. So often these communities are in remote areas. They're relying on diesel fuel generators as their sole energy source. And Barclay develops this unique end-to-end renewable energy solution based on the environmental conditions of the surrounding area. So they do everything from submitting the initial proposal to constructing the project and then also performing the maintenance on all of their projects. And they work on different types of renewable energy projects all the time as well. So it's not just like solar or wind, but they do it all depending on the conditions of the nature. So
Yeah, I've seen a lot of
geothermal, hydro.
hydro, geothermal. I think
Yeah,
it's really geography dependent, kind of whatever's going to work within that remote community.
exactly. And what I love the most about their projects is that they have a focus on community ownership. So instead of these communities paying on a recurring basis to ship in diesel, that community receives a clean renewable energy solution, which they have full ownership over, which is amazing.
To me, that's so cool.
Yeah, it is. It's very
I
unique.
I get asked all the time. Honestly, the number one question I get is how do I support Indigenous communities that I think for Canadians looking to do impact investments. That's the number one request that I get. are doing, you know, investments there, specifically when it comes to the green transition, getting off of these diesel generators onto renewable energy sources. It's just incredible. So I can't tell you how happy I was when I saw this opportunity. That said, we're going to do our, you know, our project, because the warm fuzzies for me on this are off the charts, right? Like if I can invest in this, and I
Yeah.
will be transparent with everyone that I am an investor in this project. I put $100 in a few weeks ago over the holidays. I signed up for Goparity and made my first investment of $100. So full transparency there. But I do want to go through, I
Love
already
it.
see a question from Jenny. You know, what type of investment is this considered a loan? So yes, so Goparity is what's known as a crowd lending platform. So this is lending. So this is a loan and it's crowd lending. So in similar to where we have crowdfunding, like a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo, I've seen some platforms that do equity-based crowdfunding where it's investing in the equity of companies. So not on the loan or the debt or the fixed income side, but on the equity. But specifically, why I'm so excited about this is that this is crowd lending. So this is structured as a private loan. Is that correct?
Yep, that's exactly it. So I can
Perfect.
talk also a little bit more about the structure of the loan and the offering itself.
Yeah.
So it is a working capital loan for Barclay Project Group, and their aim is to increase and expand their operations in 2024. It's a 5-year term, and it pays a 6.5% interest rate. So 6.5% annually, and investors get repaid on a monthly basis. So that repayment looks like receiving your interest plus principal repayments every month. So over the course of the 5 years is how long you'll have your money locked in for, but you are getting repayments at monthly recurring basis. So you won't actually have the entire amount that you invested locked away for those 5 years. You'll have half of it back after 2.5 years.
Okay, cool. So my understanding of, I'm doing the screen share up so that we can, you know, people can see, should
Yeah,
be able to see
perfect.
this, right? We're raising 100K. We're about 56% of the way there. My understanding is that you don't have to hit 100% in 2 days for this, that whatever money gets raised, that's what's going to be invested there. The
That's
term
correct.
is, so the liquidity risk is 5 years, right? That we're locked in for 5 years. We have to assume that there's going to be no liquidity for 5 years. Is that right?
So there is some liquidity, but it's locked in for 5 years. So if you invested $5,000 over the course of 5 years, after 1 year, you should, if everything goes according to, but we talk about those other risks later on, you should have $1,000 of your principal repayment plus that 6.5% interest rate.
Amazing. So just to clarify, this is kind of like when I get a mortgage, right? And then you know, I've got an interest rate for a certain amount of time, right? At a certain interest rate, but that every month when I'm doing my mortgage payments, I'm paying the interest, plus I'm paying part of the principal every single
Yeah.
payment. In the same way, you're doing monthly payments where we're going to be getting 6.5% on the principal on whatever is still invested then, but as well, part of that principal gets paid back every month. Am I right in that's what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so this makes a lot of sense. So that the liquidity risk, you're not the whole thing in my $100, you know, isn't fully invested for the full 5 years. I am going to be getting part of that back over time. I am going to be getting 6.5% for the full 5 years though, right? That duration risk, that is going to be 6.5%. Perfect. And then now we get into the big question, which I think is what Jenny is kind of asking about, is the default risk, right? So that, you know, we probably want to learn a little bit more about Barclay Project Group. And really, you know, the question for you, Emily, is going to be like, what if Barclay goes bankrupt? Like, what is the worst case scenario when it comes to this?
Yeah. So I'll start by saying with this investment, there is a risk of loss. And we take several precautions to, first of all, lower that risk, but also communicate what that risk is. And it's going to be different for every company that we partner with and every loan that we put on the platform. So to assess the risk, we have a three-pronged due diligence process. So we start by having a credit analysis on the borrower, which is an external risk assessor. We use a service provider called Wiser Funding, who has decades of market data, industry data, and geographic data to compare our borrower financial information to. So much like a bank would, where they're pulling from this large database, us as Goparity, we of course have a very small database. So we first look to compare it to the external credit risk assessor, Wiser Funding, and that's to assess the probability of default and loss given default. So we plug that in, those numbers, to our risk model and actually assign a risk rating, which is there to view on the project. So the risk rating for this project is an A-. And that risk rating is based on the scores from the external credit analysis. And then we also do a project viability assessment. So looking specifically at what are the use of funds for this project. Does it make sense for the borrower to be taking on this much debt?
Right.
And we have, as our third step, our chief credit officer who's underwritten over $2 billion of SME loans, small to medium-sized enterprise loans. In his career, he provides kind of this expert review and confirmation, basically a final say, where he compares the risk rating as well as using the context of the project. And although we love the analytical approach, there's often a lot that you can find just outside of looking strictly at financial statements.
Totally.
And we do de-risking as well. So you talked about this. We aim to low risk of loss by taking some form of collateral, so a security interest, a corporate guarantee, or personal guarantee. And with Barclay, we have a corporate guarantee from the organization.
Okay, sweet. So
All
there
that
is
being
risk.
said,
We need to understand that. I think, Jenny, my recollection is that when I signed up for the Goparity website, that I kind of had to provide that information, let them know that I am seriously considering this investment. That's when I did get access to a lot more of these risk-related documents. Do I have that right, Emily? That I do think that some of those credit assessments and stuff, were available, but only to people who have signed up on the platform.
Yeah, so once you have an account with us, then you can download some key financial metrics from the borrower, see 3 years of history as well. But if you're just looking at what's available to the public, you just see kind of a financial viability summary that we provide.
Amazing. Okay, great. So a couple questions here that I want to address. So the first thing is, can people outside of Canada invest in that project? I don't think so, Paolo. Unfortunately, my understanding, Canadian residents only. Is that right, Emily?
So with Goparity Canada, it's Canadian residents only. With Goparity Europe, their website is goparity.com. You might be able to invest depending on what your jurisdiction is, but that would be a good bet because they're regulated totally differently from us.
They're quite a bit bigger. So Paolo, we need to know what country you're in if you're not in Canada. So now my understanding is that in order to invest, you have to be a Canadian resident for tax purposes. So as long as you're paying taxes in Canada and you have a SIN number and you're Canadian resident for tax purposes, then you can invest in this. Otherwise, yeah, I would say look at goparity.com at the parent company. And even just out of curiosity, I went on there and checked out a bunch of their projects, and oh my goodness, there's so many projects, really, really well established. I think that's really, really cool there. Donald asks, is it safe to assume the interest is paid each month on the diminishing outstanding balance? So my understanding, so you're paying 6.5%, right? But that, the initial investment, my investment was $100. But if after a year, you've paid me back what, a fifth, so $20, so that now I'm only earning that 6.5% on the $80 remaining. Is that right?
Yes, but the way that it's structured is that you actually get the repayments back that are the same every single month. So what would be really helpful to check out is on our website, we have a loan simulation feature So you can go there, put in the amount you'd like to invest, and select the project you want to invest in, and it spits out just all of the repayment schedules and how that would be broken down between interest and principal repayment. So that's a really good way to see what you're going to end up with after the 5-year loan period, as well as how you're getting repaid and when you're getting repaid throughout the course of the loan.
I love it. I'm going to keep going with the Q&A because there are a couple more questions here.
For
I do,
sure.
I'm conscious of the time and I like getting people out, and I want to kind of, end on the note of positivity, but let's get through a couple more of these practical questions because I just think they're so cool.
Sure.
So, okay. So I do have a question here from Estelle in the chat that when I looked at the website, it wasn't available in Saskatchewan. Is that the case? I know that these things are really frustrating, especially for startups. You kind of have to go province by province. So is Estelle right that sadly it's not available in Saskatchewan?
Unfortunately, we are not available in Saskatchewan.
Sugar.
We're actually only available in 4 provinces at the moment.
Which provinces are those?
Which is British Columbia,
Yep.
Manitoba, Ontario, and Nova Scotia.
Interesting.
Yeah, so we're expanding province by province,
Yeah.
kind of slowly, because every province is regulated completely differently, and you pay regulator fees to the different jurisdictions.
Yes.
But we're trying to assess kind of where there would be demand for this, so we can
Yes.
determine where it's best for us to launch
So
next.
Estelle, write them an email and let them know that all your friends in Saskatchewan also want to invest, that you're going to tell all your amazing friends that they're going to invest too. And so that fingers crossed, Goparity can make that a priority. Okay, great. A quick, Melissa, I love this. Creating a Goparity account right now, exclamation point, which I love. Thank you, Melissa. You are awesome. Any plans for a phone app is the question.
Yes, Melissa, a phone app will be coming tentatively in the spring.
Amazing. Okay, great. This is, it's a progress, it's a journey. We don't expect things to be perfect, but this is great. I love, that you're getting some feedback in real time. Awesome. I'm seeing Vincent is saying, making my profile now, smiley face. Oh my goodness. How cool is this? Such a great group of individuals.
Yeah, I love to see that.
I love this community. Okay, Drew has a great question. This is really cool. So, hi, Tim, can you speak to the rate of risk score of A-? I see that it goes from A+ to D. So these are like school grades, right? But what is the context? Our most impacted investment offers A's, C's, thanks. So, okay. So I did a little bit of nerding out on this. I'm going to try. And then Emily, I want to see if you can correct me on this. But my understanding of the risk assessment, because I went to GoParity's main website, like the parent company, and kind of understood how this risk assessment works, and this third party, because I am such a nerd. And my understanding is that they use a framework to determine the risk, the probability risk of default. So that really, what we want to do here. Oh, and I've got a couple people in the comments saying Quebec. Quebec's chiming in the chat. I hope you can include Quebec.
Yes, Quebec is a big one.
A big one. Yeah, absolutely. So, okay. So my understanding is that there is this risk assessment. Basically, it is a little bit kind of formulaic, where based on certain factors, and that it's really like A+ is going to have the lowest probability of default. And then as the probability goes up, that's when the rating starts to come down. So I don't know if you know off the top of your head, an A-, what probability of default was assigned to that. I wouldn't expect you to know that off the top of your head, but I do know that there is a document I think I found that did kind of give that numeric assessment, quantitative assessment. I will say though, Drew, obviously we take these things with a grain of salt, right? Like, probabilities, it's a really funny business. Nobody has the crystal ball that these things are like Schrodinger's cat, Schrodinger's loan, that it's, we can assign a probability, but it is, it's in good standing until it's not. So, at the end of the day, it is a bit of a binary thing. And so, when it comes to probabilities, we do want to take that with a grain of salt. But Emily, do I have that right? That really it's about the odds of probability, and then based on the odds, this kind of, probability of default, that's how we get that grade.
Yeah, that's totally right. So with that first step where we do the external risk assessment, they give us a probability of default is basically the main figure that we look at. And the probability of default is generally grouped into, so I don't know the number off the top of my head, unfortunately, but if you do send me an email or email to our support email, I can get that information for you from our risk team who does know it much better than me. But it's grouped. So with an A plus or an A, you would have, you know, very low probability of default. And then with a D, you would have a very high probability of default. And we use that to actually assign an interest rate to our loans. So we use Canadian borrowing rates at the time. And it shouldn't be like, oh, this project is safe because it's an A. It should more so be like, you know, it's still a risky investment given that it's a private market investment, an impact investment. However, maybe your risk tolerance, you want to avoid those really low or those really like higher perceived risks. So those C's and B's. And we also use it for ourselves because we don't finance anything below a C. That to us indicates that it's just too high risk for our personal risk appetite.
That makes perfect sense. And like my dream is that y'all are going to have a whole bunch of these different offerings that we could build a nice diversified, you know, and kind of across different things, because there obviously are, you know, the best way to mitigate our risk, especially with default risk, is through diversification. That right now there is only one offering. So, you know, that I do think that you know, it's important to understand, just do a small little investment, especially in this one project right now, but that we can look to the future. I've got a great comment by AJ. Thanks, Tim, for letting us know about Goparity. We've been looking for something like this for a while and really appreciate the opportunity. Me too. Yesterday, we as a family signed up. Oh my goodness. So, you know, this Emily, what are you and your team planning next after this impact loan closing in 2 days with Barclay? Curious to hear what's next. AJ, like, honestly, this is a perfect segue. I was going to be asking this anyway, but this is kind of a nice way for us to be able to wrap up, is to look forward for the future. We will stick around if people have more specific questions at the end of this, but you know, what happened? So in 2 days, this closes. This is the only project that's available here. So, you know, how does your job change after this?
So we'll just be preparing for the next project on our platform. Well, it's kind of two parts. So one is that we want to still, once we finance a project, we don't want to kind of just forget about it. We still want to tell the story of how that project development is happening and continue to share more information about the borrowers, because at the end of the day, people are investing because these organizations are doing incredible things and they want to hear and know about the incredible things that they're doing, as well as have updates about how their financing is making an impact. So one would be following up with this borrower and continuing to talk about the awesome things that they're doing. But then, of course, very exciting will be financing our next project, and we have a couple things in the pipeline, and I don't want to make an official announcement just yet.
That's okay.
Yeah, but we've made some really great connections even through Barclay's network, and I know folks get really excited about the opportunity to finance Indigenous projects specifically. So we do want to do more work with Indigenous communities, and just being able to connect with some of the communities that Barclay's financed has been amazing to, one, tell the story of Barclay, but two, see if they have any other financing needs. So that could be a great one. And then we've also, our director of business development and my business partner was based on the East Coast for quite some time, and he made some really interesting connections in the aquaculture space, and we've financed a few renewable energy projects now. So we're looking at maybe agriculture or blue ocean, something a little bit different than just the renewable energy stream.
I love it. I mean, there's such need. I can think of so many social enterprise projects, infrastructure, sustainable infrastructure projects that need financing. So really my understanding is that like the next 2 days, you're going to be really, pushing on this campaign. Let's get raise as much money as we can for this specific project, do that. From there, if there are people in, watching this who have projects that are kind of, shovel ready, that are, ready to go, but need some financing, might not be a terrible idea for them to get in touch with you as well, since you are looking for more projects there. And then also, I think like when we were chatting before, you guys might end up doing a little like angel raise, or, that you are a new platform. Presumably, you are going to be looking for investors in Goparity Canada itself. Is that a fair assumption?
That is a fair assumption. So we did have a little chat about that. And yes, we later this year will be looking to do an equity fundraise for Goparity. So if anyone is, that level of investor, an angel investor, or connected with a VC that focuses specifically on impact, of course, we're looking to find investors who are aligned with our values, as that's our whole business principle. So yeah, we will be doing that.
Amazing.
And looking to use that funding to expand and grow into new provinces and allow for investment all across Canada is really the big one, while also introducing new investment
I love it.
projects. And yeah.
I love it. So if there are any accredited investor millionaires in chat right now watching this, by all means, if this is something you want to get involved with. Emily, I'm so just like in awe of what you're doing. I think this is really, really, really cool. I'm really happy to shine a light on what you're doing because I just think it's incredible. The last question before I kind of let people go for me is just like, just thinking about this opportunity, like it's obviously massive that if we had a plethora of different options in Canada, what would it mean to have your platform completely chock full of meaningful projects that our investors are funding? Like, what would that mean to you?
Yeah, for me, that kind of relates, that brings me back to where we started this conversation. Nowadays for entertainment, we open up our phones, we open up our computers, we scroll through an endless feed of news sources. And I don't know about you folks, but for me, it's very doom and gloom, and it can be quite depressing. So the fact that at Goparity, we have the opportunity to tell incredible sustainability sources that are, or stories that are happening right here with Canadian small businesses. And also we're allowing almost everyone to be part of those stories and be a decision maker, part of that change, and to actually profit from the green transition, is just really where we want to take this vision. And so a community of people who support an economy that's based around creating positive social and environmental impact sounds definitely like the world that I want to live in. So yeah, to answer your question, just having that community of sustainably minded investors alongside a platform filled with meaningful projects is what success looks like for us.
100%. I think we share that vision. I think this is great. Thank you so much, everyone. I will, one last quick little thing here from Joe. For those of us in provinces that cannot currently participate, is there a way to get on your mailing list to hear when it's become possible to invest? So I've got everyone's email address who registered for this webinar. So we're going to be sending up a little follow-up tomorrow, I think, maybe tomorrow, the next day. So is it safe to assume that, people will be added to your newsletter, that they can, keep on top of all of your updates?
Yep, I can add folks to the mailing list of anyone who attended the webinar. That would be awesome, and then you'll be subscribed.
I love it.
Is
Roger
there a
says,
link?
thanks for the webinar. Oh, do you have a link for your webinar? Can we throw that in the chat?
The newsletter?
or
The
to the newsletter?
newsletter.
That's right.
Yes, I do. Let me
Yeah,
grab
thanks,
it.
Maggie. Let's get people right away. Absolutely. I'll just clean up here some of these wonderful comments at the end. Roger says, thanks for the webinar. Genuinely see impact investing and increasing accessibility into investing in sustainable projects spreading worldwide. Good luck, Emily and Goparity team. Would love to help you in your equity raise when the time comes around. Amazing, Rogerio, and fantastic.
That's
Cecile says, here, Emily. Ginny, great information and a wonderfully worthwhile project. Helping get a community off of diesel and convert to clean energy is fantastic. Joe says, awesome, Emily, very inspiring. Thanks so much. Thanks, Tim. Erica says, love this webinar, love your energy and passion for this topic. Talia says, thanks so much. Catherine says, so inspiring and hopeful. Thanks so much, Tim and Emily. Go Parity. Vovi, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right, says thank you. Here's the link for Emily's newsletter and with her direct email that if anyone has any questions, they can get a hold of you there. My email is tim@goodinvesting.com. I'll just throw it in the chat at goodinvesting.com. There we go. So that, really anyone that wants to get a hold of me is great. My dream is to be doing these webinars probably monthly. I want to be showcasing some positive stories, helping people, find solutions, ways to be able to align their investments with your values. So by all means, stay tuned. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Emily, I'm so inspired. Thank you so much. Emily Mercy is co-founder and managing director at Goparity Canada. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much, Tim, and thanks for all the energy and positivity that you bring. It's made for a really, really fun evening.
Well, I'm so honored. Thank you everyone for attending. We will be sending out a little follow-up with the video, but I'm just so happy that people decided to spend their Tuesday with us. I definitely, positive energy, inspiring, these are the words that I'm seeing in the chat, and just really feel that. And I think this is such an antidote to some of the sadder things that are happening in the world. That let's take the wealth and the privilege that we do have as investors. Let's do some good in the world. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll be in touch. Have a great night.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks so much, Tim and
My
Maggie.
pleasure. Bye.